Let me tell you something I've learned after years of watching people in silence. The ones who don't talk too much often know the most. They sit there quietly observing, while the rest of the world fills the air with noise. They're not absent, they're listening. They're not shy, they're calculating, they're not cold. They're protecting something sacred. Their energy, their peace, their understanding of the world. You see, silence isn't empty. It's full of everything people overlook. Every tone, every sigh, every flicker in someone's eyes. To the quiet ones, words are expensive, and they spend them carefully. If you've ever been called too quiet, I want you to hear this. That quietness isn't a flaw. It's a form of wisdom that the loud rarely understand. The psychology behind people who don't talk much is layered, deep, and often misunderstood. Because silence for them isn't a lack of thought, it's the weight of too many thoughts all at once. Most quiet people don't speak unless they have something meaningful to say. That's because their brain isn't just processing what they want to say, it's analyzing everything before, during, and after. Who's listening? How will this land? What's the real meaning beneath the surface? It's not overthinking. It's emotional intelligence in motion. Psychologists have studied this. People who talk less tend to have higher levels of self-awareness. They spend more time reflecting before reacting. It's not that they don't feel emotions, it's that they experience them so deeply that words often fail to capture what's going on inside. And that's where the misunderstanding begins, because the world we live in rewards volume. It praises confidence that's loud, opinions that echo, and personalities that fill a room. But the quiet person knows something that most don't. That noise doesn't equal depth, that talking more doesn't make your ideas truer, and that the most powerful words are often the ones you never have to say. Think about it. Every room has that one person who doesn't say much, but when they do, everyone stops and listens. That's not coincidence, that's respect earned through silence. Because silence builds presence, and presence builds gravity. Quiet people operate differently. They notice details others miss. The trembling hand in a conversation, the hesitation before someone speaks, the energy shift when someone walks into a room. It's as if they can read between the lines of human behavior. That's not magic, it's pattern recognition. And it comes from observation, not interruption. When you talk less, your mind becomes sharper. You begin to hear what isn't said. You start to feel what others are trying to hide. And that gives you a kind of power. The power to understand without judgment, to empathize without control, and to see through the masks that people wear. But here's the thing. Being quiet doesn't mean being calm inside. For many, silence is a shield, a way of containing chaos. A quiet person might seem peaceful on the outside, but inside, their mind is an orchestra of thoughts, possibilities, memories, and worries all playing at once. That's why they pause before speaking. They're trying to find harmony before sound. Some psychologists believe that quiet individuals often have higher levels of introversion, which doesn't mean social anxiety or isolation. It means energy management. They recharge in solitude. They find peace in inner stillness. And too much noise, verbal or emotional, drains them. So they choose their words the way an artist chooses colors. Carefully, purposefully, deliberately. It's not about being mysterious, it's about being precise, because to a quiet person, words carry weight, and once spoken, they can't be taken back. But silence can also come from something deeper, a childhood spent being misunderstood, a life full of moments where speaking up led to rejection or ridicule. So instead of fighting to be heard, they learn to listen, to observe first, to speak later, if at all. Over time, this becomes not just a habit, but a survival mechanism. When you've learned that people often listen to reply, not to understand, silence feels safer, and that safety becomes home. But don't mistake this safety for weakness, because within that quietness lives one of the rarest abilities in the world, the ability to think before reacting. In a society driven by instant opinions and emotional outbursts, that's a superpower. People who talk less tend to score higher on measures of self-regulation. the psychological ability to control impulses. They can feel anger, frustration, or excitement without letting it control their mouth. They pause, reflect, and choose their words with surgical precision. That's not passivity, it's mastery. And that's why so many great thinkers, writers, and innovators in history were observers before they were speakers. They lived in the quiet corners of their minds, connecting ideas no one else could see, because silence gives birth to insight. It's in stillness that creativity blooms, that deep thoughts are born, that understanding ripens. You can't hear truth in chaos, you can only hear it in quiet. But let's be honest, being quiet in today's world is hard. People equate silence with awkwardness. They try to fill every pause with noise, every moment of stillness with commentary. And when you don't match that rhythm, you're labeled as weird, cold, or distant. But what if being quiet isn't a flaw in social rhythm? What if it's a higher form of rhythm? One that listens more than it speaks, that understands before it reacts. Because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening, just inside. And maybe that's why quiet people often connect so deeply when they finally do speak. Because every word they say has been filtered through thought, empathy, and truth. They're not trying to impress, they're trying to express, honestly, clearly, softly. There's a study from the University of Helsinki that found people who tend to be more introspective and quiet often show higher levels of brain activity in regions associated with empathy and self-reflection. That means their silence isn't emptiness, it's processing. They're not just listening to others, they're listening to themselves too. But this kind of introspection has a cost, because when you see too much, hear too much, and feel too much, you also carry too much. Quiet people often bear invisible weight. They become emotional sponges, absorbing everything around them. The tension in the room, the sadness in someone's voice, the energy in a conversation. That's why solitude feels so healing to them. It's not loneliness, it's detox. And yet, when they love deeply. When they care, it's genuine. When they show up for someone, it's not out of obligation. It's out of soul-level understanding. Because they don't do surface. They don't do small talk, they do meaning. If you've ever met someone like that, someone who speaks softly but their words stay in your mind long after they're gone, you've met the kind of person who values silence not as a gap, but as a canvas. They let you fill it with your truth. They listen not to answer, but to witness. That's rare. But here's the paradox. Quiet people crave connection, yet they fear being misunderstood. They want to be seen, but not spotlighted. They want to be heard, but not shouted over. So they often retreat, not because they don't care, but because they care too much. It's not that they don't have opinions or emotions. They just prefer to experience them fully before sharing. And when they do share, it's almost sacred. Because you're not just hearing words, you're hearing something they've carried quietly for a long time. And if you're someone who's quiet, I want you to remember this. You don't owe anyone noise to prove your worth. You don't have to speak to be powerful. You don't have to explain your silence. It explains itself in the way you notice, the way you feel, the way you understand. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a different language, a quieter way of saying, I'm here, I see, I understand. And sometimes that says more than words ever could. Because in the end, it's not about how much you talk. It's about how deeply you connect. And the ones who live in quiet often connect the deepest. They just do it in a way the world has forgotten how to see. But there's something even deeper behind this kind of silence. Something that hides beneath the calm face and slow speech. It's a story that psychology only begins to explain. Because behind every quiet person, there's usually a long history of noise. Not external noise. Internal. The kind of noise that comes from growing up in rooms where people talk too much and listen too little. Where emotions weren't conversations, they were explosions. So the quiet ones learn to protect their peace by withdrawing into their own minds. And once you learn that silence is safety, it becomes home. You see, a lot of quiet people weren't born that way. They became that way. Psychologically, it's a defense mechanism called adaptive silence. It's when your nervous system learns that saying less keeps you safe. But over time, it becomes something more than protection. It becomes identity. That's why quiet people often come across as mysterious or unreadable. They've spent years fine-tuning their inner world, so the outer world rarely gets full access. It's not about secrecy, it's about boundaries. And those boundaries are not walls, they're filters. Only the ones who truly listen get to enter. But here's the part that's both beautiful and tragic. Quiet people feel deeply but express sparingly, so they often go unnoticed in a loud room. The funny thing is, those are the same people who can feel your pain just by looking at you. They can sense when your smile is fake. They can tell when your laugh is a cover, because they live in observation, not reaction. In psychology, there's a term called high sensitivity, or HSP, highly sensitive person. Research shows that roughly 20% of the population has this trait. It's characterized by heightened sensory awareness and emotional responsiveness. In simpler words, they notice everything. Every tone shift, every micro-expression, every small change in atmosphere. It's like their nervous system has no filter for detail. And that's why they talk less, because their brain is constantly processing more data than most people realize. Every conversation is 1,000 signals. What's said, what's unsaid, how it's said, and why it's said. It's exhausting, so silence becomes their version of rest. But make no mistake, quiet doesn't mean passive. Many of the world's most influential minds were quiet observers. Albert Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." And that's true. Quiet isn't emptiness, it's incubation. It's the space ideas need to breathe before they're spoken. When a quiet person finally shares their thoughts, it's usually something distilled from hours, days, or even years of reflection. Their words aren't random, they're refined. That's why they hit differently. They speak rarely, but when they do, it feels like they're handing you a truth they've been polishing in their heart for a long time. Still, that gift comes with loneliness, because in a world that moves fast, stillness can be mistaken for disinterest. People misread quietness as detachment. They think silence means absence. But what they don't realize is that quiet people are often the most present ones in the room. Their silence is not distance, it's depth. They're not zoning out, they're zooming in. They're studying the details no one else notices, the rhythm of speech, the pattern of pauses, the sincerity in tone. To them, conversation is an art, not a reflex. And that's what makes them powerful communicators, just not in the conventional sense. Quiet people often excel in nonverbal communication. Their eyes speak. Their presence speaks. They can comfort someone without saying a word. Because empathy at its core doesn't need sound, it needs presence. And they give that completely. You can usually feel when a quiet person cares. It's in the way they remember small details you mentioned weeks ago. It's in the way they listen, not waiting to talk, but genuinely trying to understand. And that's what makes them unforgettable. But silence has its shadow too. For some, it becomes a barrier. They begin to equate quietness with control, as if avoiding words means avoiding vulnerability. They fear that speaking will reveal too much, open wounds, or invite misunderstanding. So they hold everything in until the silence becomes heavier than sound. That's the paradox of the quiet soul. They long to be known but not exposed. They crave connection but not chaos. They want to be heard but not questioned. So they hide in plain sight, visible yet unseen. Psychologically, this tension between expression and restraint can create inner conflict. It's why many quiet individuals often struggle with overthinking or anxiety. Not because they're weak, but because their minds are constantly trying to balance feeling deeply with staying composed. They feel too much and say too little. And that gap, the space between what's felt and what's spoken, can become a silent ache. But that same quietness can also be their greatest teacher. Because through silence, they learn something the loud rarely do. That not everything needs to be said to be understood. That presence often speaks louder than words. That patience reveals more than reaction ever could. When you're quiet, you notice life's subtleties. The soft sigh before someone gives up. The sparkle in someone's eyes when they talk about what they love. The tremor in their voice when they're pretending to be strong. You see life not as a series of events, but as a symphony of emotions. And that kind of perception makes you both wise and fragile. But maybe that's the trade-off. Maybe silence gives you wisdom at the cost of simplicity. Because when you see too much, you can never unsee it. And when you understand too much, you can never return to innocence. Yet this is what makes quiet people such grounding forces in the world. They bring calm where others bring chaos. They bring thought where others bring reaction. They bring presence where others bring noise. And in a time when everyone's trying to speak louder, they remind us of the power of stillness. There's a kind of confidence in not needing to fill every silence, a kind of strength in not needing to win every conversation. And that's the quiet power, the unspoken assurance that truth doesn't need to shout. So the next time you meet someone who doesn't talk too much, don't assume they have nothing to say. Maybe they're just measuring the moment. Maybe they're letting you speak because they actually care about what you're saying. Or maybe they're watching the way you speak, because that tells them more about who you are than your words ever could. You'll know when you meet one of them. They'll listen without judgment. They'll look at you in a way that makes you feel seen. They'll respond with sentences that feel like mirrors. They'll remind you that silence isn't absence, it's attention. And if you're one of those people yourself, if you've ever felt like you don't fit in because you don't talk as much as others, please understand, the world needs you. Your silence balances its chaos. Your stillness restores its sanity. Your reflection deepens its understanding. You don't need to change to belong. You just need to understand your silence for what it truly is. Your way of connecting differently. Not louder, not faster, but deeper. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't remember who spoke the most. It remembers who made them feel the most. And the quiet ones, they do that effortlessly. They speak in gestures, they comfort in presence, they express through understanding. And sometimes that's enough. Maybe the real reason they don't talk too much isn't because they're shy or scared, but because they've realized something profound. Words can explain thoughts, but silence reveals truth. And truth doesn't always need to be spoken to be felt. So, to the quiet souls watching this, keep being who you are. Don't rush to fill the spaces. Let the world slow down to your frequency. Because silence is not the absence of life. It's where life breathes between the words. And maybe that's where the deepest kind of wisdom lives. In the pauses, in the stillness, in the moments where nothing is said, but everything is understood.